Much better turnout this time, and it's just now finished. It's just now filling up. There's Fast and the Furious cars over there.
All that time lost for those bills piling up and for you paying and stuff. Just call 713. Call now. 713-CALLNOW or go to dashforlaw.com. They got you.
This weekend only at Old Navy. Get 60% off shorts for the fam. Get everyone's.
They're going to have it shortly. You can start heading that way if you are into the two-step. Two-step competition will be headed in hell on the west side of the prison. If you would like to see it, you can go ahead and start making your way that way. And that will be starting shortly.
Three quad Saturn Motorsports in San Diego. She wants to see how that car is going to run, and look at that! 782 at 190 miles an hour. She did it. She broke it.
Gentlemen, make sure you're on that left-hand lane. Mr. John Brown out of Lake Worth, Florida. Here we go.
All right, so it always seems like I'm two steps forward, one step back on this thing. Went to that first car show that I told you about, and got there. It was, you want to talk about being a car show, it really wasn't a car show. It ended up being more of a, it was at a Toyota dealership. My son works there. I actually worked there, and I got him his job there. But I've since left, obviously. He still works there. He's a technician. So I went there. The car show it started at 4 o'clock, and so it's going until 9. They had DJ, and there was cash awards, and it had different classes. At least it said it on the flyer. So I let my son drive my Viper behind me. I took the Sadie, and we get there. I think there's probably 15 other cars there before us. 30 or more came after that, and in the end, one guy with like a 67 Corvette won first place. It was like $200 or whatever, but you knew it was a a dealership event because they left all the used cars up where the car shows were at because they wanted people to. Matter of fact, we had less parking spaces because of that. So some of the people that showed up for the car shows had to park off and away a little bit to where if you didn't happen to really go over to that side, you'd never know that they were part of the car show, or you'd probably never even see them. So I don't feel like that was a good showing for the Sadie. A few people stopped by, looked at it. My daughter is into graphic design, so I'm going to have her create a sign for me. Because if you look, you know, when you pop the hood on this thing, you see, you might make out that as a blow-off valve, but there's no big honking turbo up here so where people can go ooh and ah. So if you didn't know better, you wouldn't know this is a rear mount turbo. And I'm not the kind of guy that's going to stick around, stand there, talk about my car. I've seen those guys before. It's kind of pathetic. You know, they just hang around. Got any questions? Well, I bought this back in 1972, and since then I bought it as a wreck, you know. And you just got to kind of don't make eye contact and slowly back away. You know, they're kind of fanatics. But I just want to open the hood, pop it off, walk off, and just leave it, let people look at it. But without them knowing it's a rear mount, the enthusiasm for it might not be there. So she's going to make me like some kind of board or something. I may hang it up here, up high, something like that, to where people can see it. And put up some notes of these cars never came turbo from the factory. This is a rear mount setup, you know, so forth and so forth. So we're going to do that. But so when I got back, I took it out one, I think it was a Saturday, the following Saturday, just to go cruising. And some Infiniti, Q, whatever, you know, the Infiniti and Nissan knuckleheads, they're always trying to race you. So I spanked him quite resoundingly. But what happened was, remember I put the auto PCM in here, so I don't have the in neutral or in first gear rev limit. It'll sit there and go right past 4 into 6 and 7 if I wanted to. I don't recommend that. But it also did away with the high mile, you know, your speed limiter. But turns out that it does not do away with the other in-gear redline rev limits, okay? And asked me how I know. Because I was staying in one gear, you know, just trying to get the most out of that gear, you know, as far as boost and stuff. And I hit that rev line and boom, it felt like, you know, I almost got tugged on from behind. And after that, the car didn't seem to really have any go. I mean, so I kind of got on a little bit. My boost wasn't building. It felt like, you know, but it revved and ran normally. So I hit it a few more times just to see if it wasn't just a quirk or whatever. Nope, ain't happening. So I came back and, you know, just parked it. You know, I drove around. It was driving off boost like you would expect the car to drive normally. So there was nothing going on. So anyway, I get it up. I get it back here, get it up. And I said, you know what? It's down on boost. So I'm gonna see if this. So I smoked the exhaust system, right? I'm sorry, I smoked the intake system, and I didn't find any leaks. And this is the little machine that I use. I got this off Amazon. It's so cool. If you're trying to find leaks in your system, you can find tons of these on Amazon. I forgot how much I paid for this, but I guarantee you I didn't want to pay that much, and I'm sure I didn't. And so I smoked the intake system. I found no leaks. Right? So, which is going to be strange here in just a minute. So anyway, then I said, well, if it's not building boost, so I pulled the filter off the turbo, and although the turbo, although the compressor wheel was turning very slightly, I could reach up and just tap the wheel and it would stop turning. I said, well, this thing ain't getting any exhaust or something. It's not getting good exhaust strength. I mean, at idle, it should be spinning pretty good. And so then I smoked the exhaust system. I found leaks, and here's one of them. This is right at that flex, just behind that flex tubing. I keep having issues with that. It stopped boosting. I was trying to find where and why. There it is. You can see it billowing out of there. So, of course, with this thing being wrapped from front to back, you know, finding the leaks ain't that easy. So what I had to do, I pulled down that pipe that you saw leaking there just now, and I found the leak, fixed it. And of course, remember when I showed you how horrible of a weld job I had done, and I had taken it somewhere and the guy had actually welded it a little bit. He said, look, it's not the prettiest because that's what you gave me to work with, but it shouldn't leak. And it had several little holes around, you know, just like little, almost like that right there. These aren't leaking, by the way, but it was almost like that, and they were leaking. I guess once this thing got up on here and started being, you know, pushed back and forth with torque, it just kind of exposed the weak link or whatever. So I hit those with the welder, kind of filled them up, painted it. I'm going to rewrap it, obviously. So on this section of pipe, which is the down pipe from the like the OBX header, the leaks are fine. There's no leaks here anymore. So, but I did see a leak coming from the actual upper header. And of course, I have wrapped this and everything like that, and I found it coming off right here. So I'm going to drag some weld across that and then wrap it and repaint it, all that stuff. So that, I suspected that was my, and that, you know, if you have an exhaust leak on a rear mount system, yeah, I mean, I had noticed here in the last few times I'd driven it, as I get up to 12 pounds, it's almost more laggier. I was noting, I said, man, this thing seems like it's just getting, maybe that eBay turbo starting to go out or something, you know, which I'm fully okay with. I mean, for the amount I paid for it. So I got online, was looking up turbos, same kind of turbo, max speeding rod, you know, $211. So, but anyway, so I said, well, okay, well, once I get these exhaust leaks fixed, that'll seal up the system so all the exhaust can go back there and spin the turbine wheel, and that should fix my lag problem. But while I had it up in the air and I was in the back hooking up the smoke system, I looked up front and I said, man, that pipe is hanging down up there for some reason. It was the discharge pipe of the intercooler. It was completely off. So one, the exhaust leaks weren't spinning because really at idle, that wheel back there not spinning like it was, yes, the exhaust leaks were causing that not to spin good. Because the disconnected discharge tube of the intercooler shouldn't have affected that at all. I mean, it's not trying to build boost, it's just spinning. So that was one problem I had, and this was the second one, and that's probably when I felt that boom, that hit. I wonder if at that moment the pipe didn't blow off and I just didn't know it. And so the reason it ran normally was because it was basically sucking in air from here without a filter on it. So it was coming in, nothing was hindering the air, but when I'd go to get on it, of course I didn't have hardly any boost. The boost wasn't making it through here, up through here, so I wasn't seeing any boost for that reason. So yeah, stupid stuff like that. And oddly, to get this manifold off, as you know, you got to take the compressor off. This bolt was loose, this bolt was loose. 2 of the 3 on this side of the compressor were loose. These, the bracket here for that bracket, they weren't very tight at all. I think when I painted these brackets, once they were dry, I set this thing on here. I don't remember tightening those up. So it's kind of a good thing, a good find that I had to actually do this exercise so I can find these loose bolts and all that stuff. So now what I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to seal up that hole, rewrap it, get this thing back together. So yeah, this is the gasket that I found online. I'll try to post it up here in this video. This is for the OBX header. I found a few of them, and I ordered all of them. They'll all work. Some of them have bigger ports than this, but like right here, if you mount it in the bolt holes correctly, it'll be forward a little bit. So when you put it in, just to kind of push it back while it's in there, the bolt holes will stop it from going any further, and it'll pretty much match up perfect. So yeah, I was lucky to find that actually. All right. So that's done, back together. This one done, back together, wrapped and coated and all that good stuff. But I have a little surprise. So as you might know, of course with rear mount systems, your piping, normally a turbo is mounted up here, so the exhaust gas which spins the turbo, it's a very short trip. It's from here to there, and you got, you know, spool. So running a T3 turbo, whatever you're going to run, obviously its proximity in relation to where the exhaust manifold's at, how close it is to the engine, is going to influence how fast it spools up. But even then, depending on the type of turbo you end up running, it could still be mounted up here. And because you chose a T4 or some god-awful massive turbo, it's going to be a minute before it spools up. So with a rear mount system, that's even more of a concern. And so when I was contemplating a turbo, which one I should get, I know from experience the T25 that I had ran up here for a little bit, the little, T25 turbo, it actually, it spooled up too quick, because the first and second gear in the S-Series transmissions, man, it's with any kind of power adder, it's pretty quick. And so first and second gear was pretty much useless to race from a dig. And so you'd almost always have to catch it at 30 miles an hour. The same thing you'd probably have to do by running an even larger turbo to get into your spool area. It's like trying to use a T3 up here or larger. You would, from a dead stop, it's going to be a dog till it got up to 3,500 RPMs or whatever. And then, of course, redline on this thing's at 6,800, so you don't have much time to use it before you got to shift. So really, any races you would do, you would want it at speed, okay? So when I was doing this, I wanted to get a turbo large enough to where I could take off from a stop and not have to worry about first and second gear wheel spin right about the time the turbo was kicking in, and, kind of sweet spot it. And on this one here, although I'm not totally unhappy with the way the turbo spools up, it could be quicker. And so on the rear mounts, almost always the issue with those, and where people get the idea that they have too slow of a spool, it all comes down to the turbo sizing, right? However, you always have to keep your horsepower goals in mind as well, because a T25 is not going to support 350 horsepower. That's where I'm ultimately wanting to get. So you start thinking, okay, well, I know a T3 will, but then of course you run into the issue with spool. So, okay, so you think, okay, well, what about in between? What's in between a T25 and say a T3? Well, have you ever heard of the Disco Potato? That was a pretty famous turbo, very well performing, spooled up pretty quick, was large enough to yield 300, 400 horsepower, that kind of thing. So a T25, the one that I had on there before, that's good for about 220, maybe 250. The more you try to spin a small turbo like that, the hotter the air gets. And so you start getting to a point of diminishing returns to where, yes, you're pushing 15, 20 pounds of boost, but that turbo is just not sized to be able to flow that much horsepower. It's going to heat the air up. It's just not good. So you got to move bigger. Now, the way I roll. It's eBay turbos, max speeding rods, things like that. And that's what this is. This is a max speeding rod. Now, I wanted a 2860. The 2860 RS is going to spool up a little bit quicker than the 2860. And the 2860 is going to spool up a little bit quicker than the one that I actually have here, which is the 2871. Now, like the max speeding rods turbos and stuff that they have, these numbers and stuff on here, as far as I know, they mean absolutely nothing. I talked to a company called Third Coast Turbos here in Houston, and I had talked to him some time back and asked him, hey, look, these turbos that you get from like eBay and max speeding rods, these cheap Chinese ones, can you at some point rebuild them? Or is it just, you're wasting your time? And he said, no, you can rebuild them. I can rebuild them. He said, but by the time you get to rebuilding them, perhaps the cost of that amount ends up costing more than what one of these, just replacing them outright. So the one we have on the car, it is the T3. I think it's a 50 or a 60, I forget. And I wanted to keep the wheel large enough to support the horsepower, but keep it small enough for spool. And like I said, I'm not all that unhappy with it, but I want a spool to be a little bit quicker. And that's where this comes in. Now, this is an integral wastegate turbo, but so is the T3. So all I'm going to do is take this off of here. And then what I'll end up doing is just either removing this altogether. I can't do that. I'll just have to like tack weld it or something. But in the end, this is going away. And then, so I'm going to use just the external wastegate that I have back there. So you can see this housing, the turbo is it is small. It looks big in the frame, but I mean, look at my hand. It's not that big of a turbo. And so with it being a 2871 spool, from what I was reading on all the, of course, that's if this is what it really says it is. I mean, I am going to take these housings off. I'm going to measure the exducer and the inducers and see what numbers come up with, because you never know. But, it's not like I paid for a actual Garrett, so I'm not going to be too disappointed and may not have any recourse and maybe not do anything except just rock it. But it is a smaller turbo, and so it is going to spool up faster. The only thing is, I hope that it is closer to a 2871, so I can actually have the horsepower I'm going for, and then of course the spool. So after measuring them, on the compressor side, the inducer is 49, the exducer is 71, on the turbine it's 53 on the inducer, and the exducer is 46. I checked it, and that is a GT 2871 measures. So there you go. So this will come off. I've got an adapter now. The way I have my pipe back in the back, the pipe comes in here like that, and then there's a offshoot for the wastegate that comes up this way over to here. This is a T28 or T25 flange, and of course the flanging I have back there currently from this flange down is a T3. So what I did was I got on eBay, our friends at eBay, and found this adapter. And so this adapter has the T25 flange for here, but then you should be able to bolt it up to the T3 that you have. My only concern is the change in height that's currently in there. I'm gonna have to look to see. Everything's workable. Everything's, everything's doable. No matter what happens, I can make it work. But it's just one more step. So I'm gonna go to the car shows that I have, that I've told you I'm gonna go to. And this should be nothing more than a weekend to get in there, find what I need, and then make it happen. But so I'll be able to spool up quicker. I'm going to take these off, check for any like casting debris and stuff like that in there, which these things are known for that. But I do know, and I think I read where this turbo has a 180 degree thrust bearing in it. I talked to the guys at Third Coast, and I said, hey, he said those bearings are perfectly fine if you're running like 12 pounds or something like that. He even said maybe 15, creeping up to maybe 20, you'd be okay. But past that, you'd want a 360 degree thrust bearing. And so I said, well, if it comes to it, can you take this turbo and put a 360 degree thrust bearing in there? And he said yes. So I could bring it to him, just take this side off, keep his work simple, just bring in the center section, basically, and he'll do that, balance it and all that stuff. And I want to say he said out the door it'd be $250. Do you know how much this turbo costs? I bought it directly off of Max Speeding Rods, so I wouldn't get an even cheaper Chinese model, cheaper in quality, and build and all that. $120. So so 120 plus 250, that's what, 370 for a turbo. And if the only thing that's going to be an issue now, of course, the what you get into now, this is a journal bearing, it's not a ball bearing, but the only other thing you kind of think about is what kind of RPMs can this take. And we're going to find out. So it's just one of these things. If it breaks, big deal. We'll just go ahead and spend another $120 and keep the boost down, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I got going. So instead of going with this adapter, the T25 to T3 adapter, actually this adapter is, if I had to use it, yes, it'd be fine to use it. But when I put this on there, when you look through the hole, the opening was so off that I was going to have to do a lot of like porting to get that to match. Plus the height here, I don't know how that's going to work. It should work, but I ain't got time for should. So if I can keep the configuration as close to what I have now as possible, then it'll save me time. So what I went with is this one. This is from a company called Mamba, and it includes all the nuts, or studs rather, all the gaskets, and of course this fitting here. And if you look, this is as high as it's going to come up. And it's not perfectly ported. You can see a little bit here on this side I'm going to have to do. I mean, I've moved it around as much as I could. This would center it pretty much, I think, so I can port it just a little bit. So I'll put some like paint down inside there with a little paint pen that I have, and then take this back off, and then I'll go ahead and port it to match it. But you can see the height difference in this thing from what it would have been compared to this one here. I mean, big difference. So I'll keep that one for some other, maybe I'll you know, if I ever go back to front mount, I can use it for that because I have the manifold for it. But so this works out great. It's machined really well. Like I said, he includes all the studs and nuts for each side, and this will work out really well, I think. I marked off where I needed to basically shave it off at. I got the wastegate welded shut inside here, just around a little bit. It ain't gonna, you don't have to be like beaded all the way around. It's gonna be able to, that'll stop the gate from opening. And on this side, I went ahead, like I said I was gonna do, and I basically, you can call it port matching, I guess, to that adapter, that T3 to T28 adapter. And here is the, I guess, the turbine housing outlet. It's a 2.5 inch V-band clamp. So this is going to go over there on that piece there. Now, the way that this one's made, the wastegate's right here, and so it allows the wastegate to open and flow the air out of here. But of course, you need the wastegate on a external wastegate setup closed shut, because whenever that valve opens, whether the diaphragm's connected or not, that door is going to open, and it's going to bypass the turbine wheel, which you don't want that. You want it to spool up as fast as possible. The only time where maybe, let's say you're having overboost situations where you've got your wastegate set, you know it's set to say 12 pounds, and for some reason you keep creeping up to 13, 14, 15, well, your exhaust is too small, or something's causing that. You need more room for the exhaust to bypass that wheel, and so that's when you might want to, that's a big hole. The wastegate door is a big hole, but I don't want that, because in my setup I need it to spool as fast as possible, and that's the whole reason why I'm going to the different turbo, right? Man, apparently, unless President Xi makes it himself, these Chinese things are just, holy cow. So this is supposed to be a 2.25 inch V-band. I've got some 2.25 inch V-band clamps that I was gonna just put on here, and then of course I've got other side, and then put the clamp on it. It's off by about maybe that much. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I could just weld a pipe to this. This is just a small, that pipe, I don't even have well, the section of pipe I have on here right now only comes off about that far. I was going to do like a 90, because what it's doing is it's shooting exhaust towards the oil pickup pump, or the oil return pump. It's just sooting up everything inside of there. So I'm gonna like probably gonna put it back towards the back of the vehicle, but it's just gonna be a quick 90, something like that. So it doesn't have to be, a V-band clamp with, so that's probably what I'm gonna do. And but ain't that something? I mean, 2.25 inch. Last time I checked, 2.25 inch was like worldwide measure. It wasn't like there's an American 2/4 inch and there's a Chinese 2/4 inch. But anyway, this does fit. But that's done. All right, so here's the new one on. Visually it's smaller. I ended up having to use that other adapter to the turbo rather than the real neat short one, because the bolt holes for my little mock-up bracket, they weren't going to work for that. And had I been able to use that, I probably would have been coming very close to the downpipe there, the blow up for the wastegate. So it would have been iffy, maybe, but it didn't work at any rate. So here we are. So I just need to, because it is a little bit lower, I'm going to have to get a 45 hose clamp here, and I'm going to have to try to make it, get a fairly long one to reach over to there, which isn't an issue. I should be able to get that. You can buy these couplers with different length legs on them. I usually get my stuff from siliconeintakes.com. They're a little bit more pricier, but they are better quality. And you know, I can go China, Amazon all day long, I guess, but on a hose clamp blowing off and stuff like that, or just failing, because there's going to be a little bit of oil in here and there. You know, you don't want it failing for that. They're oil resistant. They're reinforced. They got a lot of layers inside the walls. So here's an interesting little tidbit. This is that Geostorm throttle body, and this is the dual overhead cam one. The dual overhead cam one is actually physically larger in bore than the than the Saturn's dual overhead cam throttle by quite a bit, actually. I measured these and I put them in a video before. So normally the way this thing mounts up, the way I do it, is because the cam over here is on the same side as the cam from the factory deal. You just have to route it from the top instead of the bottom. It uses pretty much the same IAC motor and the same throttle position sensor for the most part. It actually has some vacuum ports. There was two here that I think came down and did a 90, and then these two either shot out or they did a 90 facing this way. Well, those are, you know, if you want, this would have been, I say vacuum, this would have been more for like cooling, I believe, but these two are vacuum. So when you turn this thing over, I look in here and I'm trying to see the port that would feed those vacuum ports there, and I didn't see it. So knowing that the mounting surface was different than the S series, and knowing that the gasket was going to cover pretty much everything here, you know, for the most part, to seat it to the intake, I said, well, how are they getting, how are those ports getting vacuum down here? And I said, well, I'm not going to use these, so I just chopped them off so I could, you know, reach in there and do things with wiring and stuff like that behind it. And I figured by putting it on the intake manifold, it would, you know, the gaskets covering all these ports and stuff. So I said, okay, well, I shouldn't have to worry about these leaking. And I never did hear, the idle never did suggest that I had any kind of vacuum leak or anything here. So if we look at the gasket, and it's still on here, you see the top up here? That indentation right there. And then there's another, you can see this little rise right here, right in the middle, like the 12 o'clock. And then if you look down here, you'll see those two impressions there. You see that those aren't getting any air on this side. They're basically shut off by the fact that this gasket is blocking them off. If you can see down in there, I'm shaking because I'm trying to hold this cam back. But if I get the light just right in there, you'll see that little dimple right there. See the little notch? In front of the notch, there's a hole. That's where they're getting fed from. So, all this time I've had a leak and I didn't know it. So we're going to fix that now. just going to run a couple. This is aluminum throttle body, but these are metal ports. So I'm just going to drag the welder across here and just block them up. All right, so I got the holes fixed on the throttle body. The thing I'm running into with that new turbo is I was coming home from the show. I tried to boost 2 times and it wasn't happening. So I said, okay, well, great. Probably another exhaust leak or something like that. I didn't think I popped the intercooler, any kind of charge pipe like I have the last 2 times, because I just didn't have that, like, boom, and then, So checked it. I smoked the exhaust side first, and I had a little bit coming up from back here. I actually thought it'd be more down here at this flange, because with this wrap on here, as if you have the Saturn, it comes up underneath and it goes right where that kidney-shaped bracket is at for the transmission to engine. And without the wrap on there, it clears it. With the wrap, not so much so. So the last time I put this on here and I smoked it, thank goodness for that machine, otherwise I'd be hunting my pee-pee with no hands. It had little wisps coming up from there, even though those bolts were tight. However, now that I've smoked the exhaust, I don't know if it needed time to seat or seal or whatever, it's not showing any leaks from down there. Just a little wisp from over here. So then I took the smoke machine and I switched it over to the intake. And came up here, checking up here first, and of course looked through the rest of the way from the front to the back. And man, back over here, it was blowing its butt off. And I'm like, what the heck? And I've got a mass of hoses and things. You guys know that. I've got my little manifold from my vacuum and all that stuff back there. And man, so obviously I got to take this thing off every time. And so I took it off. I thought I found a little hose that wasn't connected well. So I connected it, then zip tied it, and put it all back together, smoked it again. This smoke machine, it'll do it for 5 minutes, and then it'll turn off, but then the pump in there keeps going, and that pump, is kind of like adding additional air after you put smoke in something. That's when it really tells on itself. And man, it just came billing up out of there again. I said, well, shoot, it wasn't that hose. So, like I said a minute ago, those ports on that throttle body, they were leaking really good. And so I took the throttle body off, dabbed them, put it back on. And of course, a little pinhole still was leaking on it. So I took it back off, dabbed it again. Now it's finally fixed. So we don't have any leaks from up here. But back here is a different story. So once I got that leak fixed, I smoked it again. And I was seeing smoke coming from up in between this compressor housing and this center section here. And I did loosen these to clock the compressor housing so it made up with my outlet tube. And I tightened them down what I thought was, tight enough, because these are steel and this is aluminum. You don't want to go too tight or you strip the threads out. And that's important for in a minute. So what I checked with max speeding rods, there never has been any kind of O-ring in there or anything like that. But I did notice there was some kind of like gel, kind of like, almost like residue, sticky residue, like decal stick or whatever. So maybe that's what they were using to seal it. Anyway, oddly enough, I thought it was just residue, so I cleaned it off before I put this thing back together the first time. Well, then we had the smoke coming out here, and I said, well, there's got to be, maybe there was a seal in there, and whatever. So I ended up thinking, okay, what can I put in there? I can just put some gasket maker, just a real thin bead. I mean, not even a bead, just a smear of it, just really thin, so that when this thing seats on here, it makes a good seal. And so then I said, well, I don't know if I want to do that. So I ended up putting some thread sealant on it that I had. And it almost had the same consistency and look that was originally on there. So I did that. And then I tightened all the bolts up, and of course these two right here, it got to the point where I tightened them and they weren't getting tighter anymore. And I was doing an eighth of a turn. You know, I'm just being very gentle. Well, of course, these other ones tightened up nice and good. These two, they're tight, but questionable. And so then I smoked it again. Well, guess where the smoke's coming from? Here and here. So I'm going to let that thread sealant seat in there real good and seal. I just got back. My son came out and ran the car, and I hit it with some soapy water. And not that this thing's going to be really building any boost while it's sitting here up in the air with wheels free spinning. But I said, okay, well, maybe I'll get lucky and see if, you know, whatever. So if I have a boost leak, if this housing is leaking fairly well, then, you know, would it not build up boost? It certainly wouldn't. But I just don't think it would be, it should have built up something more. So I've done some fixes. I've done some changes. Those two holes up there with that throttle body, I mean, that smoke was pouring out of there. That just means that I've had an exhaust leak, not exhaust leak, I'm sorry, a vacuum leak this entire time that I've had that throttle body on there. I thought that those ports were blocked off. So I've been sucking in unfiltered air, and I've been blowing air out and delaying boost back here with the other turbo. So now that that's fixed, I'm going to get it down on Sunday. I'm going to go take it out after church. I'm going to take it out and see if this thing ain't boosting now. I contacted Max Speeding Rods, and they were saying like, oh, well, you to be please first checking for external wastegate rod. Turn nut. See, does it build boost? Take pictures. Well, yeah, I can't because I took off the wastegate, obviously, because I'm using this external one, and I welded up the flapper, you know. And also, too, my mind wasn't thinking right. I had actual smoke pouring out of here, too, right there. And I thought, oh, man, I'm going to have to put a bead around this entire deal. But this is on the opposite side of the turbine wheel, so it's not affecting anything as far as boost buildup. So, you know, just being under here racking my brain, what could be wrong? What could be wrong? I don't have any exhaust leaks up here at the flanging, so I'm not losing exhaust there. I've checked all the piping and stuff under here. I don't have any boost leaks or exhaust leaks or anything up here. So either this turbo is just crap out of the box and it's not building boost. My son came up, revved it. I watched the wheels. They sped up, you know. I don't hear that typical like I did on the T3. But this is a smaller turbo. The wheels aren't as big. I didn't really hear it on my old T25 either that much. So yeah. I don't know if I've got a problem still. So when I get it down Sunday, if it's not boosting then, I may end up just getting another one of these turbos. Maybe it's bad. Maybe there's something inside that's not sealing right or something like that. And for $120, I'll take a gamble, you know, and then just repeat what I've done here. So let's say get that on there. Let's say I take the drive Sunday and it doesn't work, and I order the new turbo and I go through the hassle of putting that on there and it doesn't work. Brother, I'm making this commitment now. I'm just going to go front mount again. I'll use that old log manifold that I had. Log manifolds are good, 400 horsepower, whatever. Daddy's getting tired. Truthfully. And I still got to put the Det 3 on. So I've got to get this hammered out. I just want this done. And so I can come out on a weekend, take the car cover off. I think I'm going to go out and enjoy my Saturn for this weekend. Oh, that was fun. I'm going to put it up now. A few weeks later, I think I'll take the old Sadie out for a little quick blast drive. Oh, that was fun. Put the cover back on it and repeat. I don't want to come out here and have to rack it, find a problem, fix it, go drive it. Oh, not fixed, come back. Man, it's a project for sure, but I'm 56, going on 57. My body hurts. I'm tired. I'm losing my zeal. There's some other things I'd like to correct on this one because, you know, believe it or not, this was still kind of like the beta version of what I wanted. Like the fender flares and stuff like that, I mangled them, a couple of them when I put them on, when I got them too hot with the heat gun to mold them to go more in a curvature than what they were. So, working on it, man, but I'm getting tired. So I need some positive things to happen. And I got to be careful too, because there's been a lot of good stuff. There's been a lot of stuff that I've done. And that's why sometimes I go back and I watch my own videos and say, wow, man, I've done a lot on that thing, you know. I went to the last car show that I went to, the Import Faceoff. Great car show turnout. There was a lot of old school stuff there. I left it, you know, I popped the hood and left it, and I put a little boost rear mount turbo sign on it, you know, and I went up into the stands and was watching it for a little while and had a lot of attention. And they would come up and they would be looking, and they'd be looking at the engine bay, you know, like you could tell they were wondering, well, he's got a blow off valve, but where's the turbo, you know? And then they'd see the sign, and then they almost always walk right to the back, dip down, look, and go, ah. And so there was a guy with like an old 85 or 89 CRX. He parked next to me. He sat behind his car the whole meet. And I left and I went and watched drag racing. I went and watched the drifting and stuff like that. And when I came back, when I was getting ready to leave, he said, dude, your car got so much attention. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I was like, wow, you know. And there you are with your nice little CRX. And I mean, it was a really nice CRX, it really was. But while I was up in the stands watching people as long as I was, nobody was really paying that much attention to it. So the Saturn is still a draw. The Saturn, you know, it's a unique vehicle. As a matter of fact, as I was leaving, I saw they were doing the low car limbo. And I think I was catching it on the third round. And I said, you know, I'm leaving anyway. Let me go see if I can make one sweep and see if I can get, you know, through once, and then I'll come back around. I didn't make it, but when I went up to the limbo line with the girls holding the deal, ooh, there was a cute girl there. Oof. Anyway, the announcer said, oh, a Saturn, man, you don't see these anymore. So if you have a Saturn and you're doing things to it, you know, don't get discouraged. There's not a lot of aftermarket. This car has been uphill battle from the day one. I mean, even when Saturn Motorsports was around, there just wasn't as much as the other people have. I mean, this thing's kind of bastardized with the Subaru coilovers and all that stuff. There's apparently an $850 set of coilovers out there that are pretty good, that is made specifically for the Saturn. That's great. But a lot of the stuff you just got to do on your own to figure it out. But I mean, I was happy to hear that they were recognized. There was a large group of people there at the limbo. So, but anyway, nice recognition. Won't be going to another car show anytime soon, I don't think. I got it looking okay, but I'm just not a car show guy. I don't know. Maybe when the weather turns fall or spring, that's cool, maybe. But man, I was a sweating monkey out there all night long. But anyway, thanks for staying in tune. Updates soon to come.